Good morning. It's Friday. Once again, we've survived the week. Bonus XP for us. Now, today's going to be a fairly quick video because I just want to go over for the beginner series the dice of Dungeons & Dragons. Because although a lot of experienced players will feign shock and surprise, the dice can actually be a little bit intimidating for new players. A lot of people don't know what the terms used are or what the dice look like. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to record the video this morning, and then I'll add in images of the dice before I post it. And we'll just go through and I'll talk a little bit about each die and kind of some of the more common roles that it's used for. So, starting out, the most common die that you will ever use in Dungeons & Dragons, the D20. Now, D simply means die. 20 is the number of sides it has. So a D20 is a 20-sided die. That notation you will see throughout D&D. You'll see 1D20 or 2D20 or 2D20 plus 5, and that would be telling you to roll 2 die 20 and add 5. I don't think there's actually a roll that has you roll 2 die 20 plus that, but never mind, that's for later. The D20, what is it used for? Well, the D20 is used for almost everything. If you're rolling initiative, as we've talked about, you roll a D20. If you're rolling to attack, you roll a D20. If you're rolling a skill check, or an ability check, or a saving throw, you roll a D20. In most situations, if you can't think of the die to roll, you're going to roll a D20. Doesn't always apply, but mostly, if you have to take a guess, and you're not sure what die is going to be called for, pick up your D20. Next, on from the D20, we have the D12. Now, the D12 is a bit like the stepchild of the D&D dice. It's often forgotten about. The reason for that is that really the only time you're ever going to roll a D12 is if you have a great axe. The damage dealt by a great axe is 1d12. I think it's the only weapon that deals that damage, and I don't think there's any other role in D&D, unless maybe a specific table somewhere calls for it, where you roll a d12. So in likelihood, it means that you're playing some form of fighter or barbarian, and you're using a big, heavy, two-handed great axe. Other than that, you won't be needing that one. Next up, the D10, the 10-sided die. Now, again, mostly this one is for weapons. You have some various swords and I believe the heavy crossbow that use the D10. You might also have the occasional spell that does D10 damage. Not many, but a few. So again, it's going to be damage. Long swords, I believe, are a D10 if you use two-handed. Now, the other thing that's worth calling out when talking about the D10 is something that you will often get if you purchase a dice set, but that is not very often used in 5e, and that is the D percentile. This is going to look just like a D10, and in fact, physically, it is a D10. The difference being that it has double digits on it. So instead of 3, it has 30. Instead of 5, it has 50. The reason for this is that the intention is you pick up your D percentile and your D10 and you roll them together. And this is going to give you a number out of 100. So let's say you roll a 30 on the D10 on the D percentile and a 5 on the D10. That means that your total is 35. Now, there are not many player roles that are going to ask you to roll a D100, but a lot of the DM tables will. Alright, moving on from the D10, the D8. The D8 gets a lot of work, but again, it's all in weapons. Various swords, various javelins, perhaps, a couple crossbows, bows, a couple spells. You're seeing a pattern here. Other than the D20, most things are weapons. Now then, after the D8, we move on to the D6. Now, if you've ever played anything other than D&D, if you've played Monopoly or whatever, you'll know what a D6 is. It's your standard box, square, die. It's the dice that you use in casino games. It's what you normally think of when you think of dice. The D6 is another workhorse. Not quite as common as the D20, but really common. There are tons and tons and tons of spells that use the D6 for damage. Usually in multiples. It's not uncommon to cast something like Fireball and need 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10 die 6 to roll at one time. You'll need a lot of them, or you'll end up re-rolling the same one tons of times and having to add them up. It is also used in weapons. Short swords, I believe, are a D6. Yeah, D6 is, again, very common damage die. And then we come to the little pyramid-shaped weird D4. Referred to by many a player as the caltrip, because if you've ever stepped on one, that name makes perfect sense. The D4 is used primarily in very low-level spells and the dagger. It's the lowest damage die there is. They can be very hard to read. There are two different types of D4. I'll try to get a picture of each of them to post. There's one of the D4s that has the numbers on the point, on the top of the die. So when you stand the die up, look at the point, and whatever number is face up, that's what you've rolled. But there's another kind of D4 that has the numbers along the base of the die, so the bottom of the die. So in those cases, you'll roll it, look at the bottom, and there'll be a number that's face up. But in most cases, what you're going to want to remember with the D4 is that because there's not a top on the die, which is obviously what you normally look at on the die, what you want to look at is whatever number is properly vertical. The number that is positioned correctly. If a number's on its side or on its upside down or whatever, that's not what you've rolled. It's whichever one is straight up and down, that's the number that you rolled on the D4. Anyway, that's all there is to the dice. You usually won't need to use many of the dice. You'll find from your character, okay, I'm a fighter, I've got a great sword, so I need a die 20, I need a couple die 6, and I need a die that's you for that character. You might not need any other dice as that character ever, unless you change weapons. But then you might find another character. Okay, I'm going to play a wizard now. Okay, I need a d20, I need a d4, and I need a pile of d6s. And that might be that for that character. Anyway, done for the day. Like, subscribe, keep watching. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Tomorrow's actually Saturday, so maybe I won't be back with more. Stay tuned to find out. Pay attention. Have a great day.